back to the big news this morning. So President Trump has posted that the framework trade agreement with China is a done deal, and that will include upfront shipments of rare earths, but exact details of the pact remain fairly sketchy. Now, the president also says he will be sending letters to other trading partners in the next couple of weeks, setting unilateral tariff rates.
Well, we're dealing with Japan, we're dealing with South Korea, we're dealing with a lot of them. We're dealing with about 15 countries, but as you know, we have about 150 plus, and you can't do that. So we're going to be sending letters out in about a week and a half, 2 weeks, to countries and telling them what the deal is, like I did with EU.
Stephen Engle, our chief North Asia correspondent, is here. So, Steve, fresh off this tariff truce, we're hearing, again, stronger rhetoric coming out of the president here. What do we know about this?
He can't leave a day go by with no headlines, right? So we conclude the 2 days of those 20-hour talks in London with what he calls is a done deal. I think the Chinese response a little bit more muted to that, and I think there's some maybe disagreements, especially among investors, about whether the U.S. narrative sounds like it's if China does this, then we will do this. The onus is on China to make the first move on relaxing or speeding up the export of those critical rare earths. But we'll get to China's response in just a second. On this unilateral reciprocal tariffs, the deadline for everyone except China is fast approaching in less than 4 weeks on July 9th. But now he is saying, Donald Trump is saying that he intends to send those letters to those key trading partners within the next 1 to 2 weeks. Essentially, we cut that soundbite off a little bit. He says, at a certain point, we have to say, this is the deal, you take it or you leave it, is what he said. And again, we don't know what kind of leverage this will exert on its trading partners. And there were a lot of countries and economies that got those unilateral reciprocal tariffs individually, like Vietnam, 46%. But again, he singled out countries like Japan, South Korea, India, the EU, at 15 economies he mentioned. So I think it's changed a little bit since Liberation Day. They are prioritizing key trading partners. And where does that leave all the others as the deadline comes fast approaching?
And where does that leave the deadline, right? If you're talking about 2 weeks,
right.
Working letters.
Moving goalposts now, and he's had a history, of course, of moving the goalposts before.
Yeah. You mentioned about the China response so far has been muted. What exactly did we hear in that readout?
Okay. He Lifeng, as quoted by CCTV, said the two sides should now show the spirit of good faith. We do have a graphic. We can see what He Lifeng, the vice premier and lead negotiator, had to say. The two sides should show the spirit of good faith in abiding by their commitments and jointly safeguarding the hard-won results of that dialogue in London. The statement did not elaborate on the specifics of the framework. The United States, as Donald Trump and Howard Lutnick and others, Scott Bessent, Jameson Greer, have basically said they expect upfront deliveries and the speeding up of the licensing and export approvals of these key rare earths to the United States, especially the things like terbium, dysprosium, samarium, which go into industrial magnets for the aerospace, automobile industry, defense industries. They hold their magnetism through high heat. That's why they're so special, right? China's got this lever of negotiation now. The United States needs them. And one thing that's very interesting, and if you have a chance, go read Jennifer Welch's article on the Bloomberg Terminal. She's with Bloomberg Economics in Washington, D.C. She really breaks down the kind of leverage that China now has, because they basically set up this export licensing mechanism that they're not going to dismantle overnight, because things could go pear-shaped again, right? And what this does, this export licensing mechanism, basically requires U.S. orders to show what they're using them for, all the details of the supply chain. All that information is extremely valuable to China. They're not going to be dismantling that anytime soon. So there's a lot of interesting geopolitics going on, and intelligence gathering as well through all of this. I've only scratched the surface of the whole deal. Now we have to kind of see where this goes from here. Does China speed up the licensing process? Does the United States in turn or simultaneously back off on its more recent export controls?